First of all, if God wants to take people out of Egypt, why doesn't he just go ahead and do it? Why is he sending Moses? And why all these negotiations? If God would appear to Pharaoh directly and say, let my people go if you know what's good for you, done. And they wouldn't need the plagues, and it wouldn't take almost a year. What is all that for? So God tells Moses, go down to Egypt and speak to Pharaoh and tell him that I, the God of Israel, demands that he let my people go so that they may serve me. Interesting expression. God appears to Moshe in a burning bush and says, it's time for the Jews to be redeemed and taken out of slavery. In this week's portion, God says, I promised your patriarchs that I would do this, and now the time has come to fulfill my promise. What is going to follow is going to be 10 plagues. Vivid descriptions. Moshe comes to Pharaoh, says, God says, let my people go. Pharaoh says, I'm a God too. Why should I listen to your God? And there's a plague. And at first, Pharaoh is not impressed because the plague is not that miraculous. Any sorcerer worth his salt can do the same thing. Change water into blood? No big deal. Make frogs overrun the country? No big deal. So Pharaoh's not impressed. The plagues become more and more dangerous and deadly, devastating. Finally, Pharaoh says, okay, go. And then the Exodus happens. So we have to understand, what is all this about? First of all, if God wants to take people out of Egypt, why doesn't he just go ahead and do it? Why is he sending Moses and Aaron? And why all these negotiations? If God would appear to Pharaoh directly, to Pare, and say, let my people go if you know what's good for you, done. It's hard to refuse God, So that would have done it, and they wouldn't need the plagues, and it wouldn't take almost a year because each plague was a separate month, one plague per month. What is all that for? Why the enslavement? Why was Jacob and his family down in Egypt in the first place? Well, technically we know because there was a famine. But there's got to be more to it than that. Everything happens for a divine reason, including the famine. So the point of it all is, the land of Canaan, was going to become the Holy Land, the land of Israel. Through the efforts of Avraham, and then Yitzchak, and then Yaakov, this was going to become the Holy Land. Its neighbor, Egypt, was the most unholy of lands. That's not exactly a good neighbor. So Egypt also had to be elevated at least to the point where people could believe in God and not in all sorts of gods. That was the point. That was the purpose. The plagues were not to punish or torture the Egyptians, but to refine them to where they could recognize that, yes, there is a creator, yes, there is one creator, and he is the only God that we're supposed to pray to, trust in, and believe in. That took 10 steps, 10 layers of unholiness peeling away. By the 10th plague, Pharaoh said, God is righteous, we are the sinners, do what God says. Mission accomplished. So it's not just a story of revenge and punishment. It's a story of redemption, not only for the Jewish people, but for the land of Egypt. At some point during the plagues, when Moshe comes to Pharaoh and says, now will you let my people go? Pharaoh says something really profound, because he was not a fool. Pharaoh says, this talk about leaving and going out into the desert, why? You have jobs, you're building Egypt, you're accomplishing something. It's hard, I understand. But don't you have a sense of accomplishment? The reason you're demanding to go out into the desert is because you're just growing lazy. You must have too much free time. It's not good. It's not healthy to have so much free time. People with free time on their hands get themselves into trouble. So it would be irresponsible of me to let you go out into the desert and destroy any possibility of ever amounting to anything. So go back to work. It's healthy. This very eerily reminds you of something in more recent history. You remember over the gates of Auschwitz, the inscription said, work makes you free. This talk about taking off time, going on vacation, not healthy. Strange how they're both saying the same thing. But what is the moral of the story? The moral of the story is that everything in holiness has a reflection, an opposite but equal reflection, in the unholy. In holiness, work is the healthiest thing in the world. Work in holiness means partnering with God in making the world a holier place. If we start looking for vacation time from that, yes, we are ruining our lives. We're getting too lazy. We should stop looking for ways out, and we should look for ways to increase and speed up the process so that the world will become a holier place a little sooner rather than later. You take that concept, which is pure holiness, and you apply it in unholiness, it turns out to be vacation time, leisure time, free time, which is really not healthy. So Pharaoh was saying something wise, but applying it in the wrong instance. Jews were not asking for vacation. They were asking to go into the desert to take on the job of partnering with God. And when Pharaoh realized that, around the 9th or 10th plague, he said, oh, in that case, go. By all means, go and serve God. If you enjoyed this conversation or this topic, and you're looking for more information, or you want to hear it again from another angle, there's a way to do that. And that is in this book. It's all there. Order it from Amazon. You can read it, reread it, and share it.